Do you think your dog stretching when they see you is just a simple body stretch and nothing more? Maybe not. Some of the smallest things dogs do can reveal much more than we realize about what is happening inside their body and state of mind. And this may be one of those moments. It is not loud like jumping all over you. It is not as obvious as nonstop tail wagging. But that may be exactly why it matters. Because when a behavior is quiet and easy to miss, it can also be one of the most honest signals your dog gives. That little stretch when they see you may be telling you that something just shifted inside them. Their body may be waking up, softening, opening, or getting ready for a moment that matters. In this video, we are going to look at 6 of the most important possibilities behind that stretch and what it may really mean when your dog does it the moment they see you. This video is not going to reduce that stretch to one easy answer, like your dog loves you or your dog is simply happy. Instead, we are going to treat it the way it deserves to be treated, as a small behavior with several possible layers of meaning. In some cases, it may be a basic physical response as the body shifts from rest into movement. In other cases, it may reflect comfort, a soft kind of greeting, an invitation to interact, or even part of a familiar routine your dog has learned to associate with you. Through 6 key possibilities, we will break down the physical, emotional, and social layers behind this behavior. And more importantly, why the surrounding context is what determines what that stretch is really saying. 1. Sometimes your dog stretches for the simplest reason of all. Their body is just waking back up. Before we turn this into something emotional or symbolic, we have to start with the most basic possibility. Sometimes a stretch is just the body doing what bodies do after rest. If your dog has been lying down, sleeping, or staying still for a while, a stretch can simply be part of waking the body back up. Muscles lengthen, joints loosen, posture shifts. The body moves from stillness into readiness. That means if your dog gets up, sees you, and stretches, the stretch is not always a message directed at you first. Sometimes it is just the physical reset that naturally happens after a period of rest. And that matters because without this first point, it would be too easy to overread every stretch as a deep emotional sign. Sometimes the timing is meaningful. Sometimes it is just overlap. Your dog wakes up. Their body starts to come online. You happen to be the first thing they see. So the stretch gets linked to your presence, even though the body may have already been preparing for movement. That does not make the moment meaningless. It just means the body often speaks before the emotion becomes clear. In fact, this is what makes the behavior so interesting. A stretch can begin as a physical reset and still become socially meaningful depending on what happens next. But at its most basic level, it may simply be your dog moving out of rest and into motion in the most natural way possible. So the first thing to remember is this: not every stretch is a hidden message. Sometimes it is just the body shifting gears after stillness, and your presence happens to be part of that transition. 2. Sometimes the stretch tells you something just as important. Your dog does not feel the need to brace when you appear. The first possibility was physical. This one is more emotional, but still written in the body. A dog who feels tense often looks smaller, tighter, and more guarded. The body shortens, the muscles hold, the movement becomes quicker, stiffer, or more cautious. That is what makes a soft, unhurried stretch so meaningful in the right moment. Because when a dog stretches with a loose body, an easy face, and no sign of pulling inward, it can suggest that they do not feel the need to protect themselves from what is happening. At least in that moment, their body is not preparing to defend, avoid, or shut down. It is opening instead of bracing. And that is not a small thing. Dogs do not open their bodies carelessly. If your presence regularly meets them in a way that feels safe, predictable, and gentle, the body often shows that before anything else does. Not with drama, not with a huge display, sometimes just with the quiet absence of tension. That is why this kind of stretch can feel so warm without being loud. It is not necessarily excitement. It is not always play. It is not even always a greeting in the social sense. Sometimes it is simply the body saying, "I do not need to hold myself tight right now." And for a dog, that is already a meaningful state. You can often see the difference in the details. A longer line through the body, softer eyes, slower movement, a stretch that flows instead of snaps. The dog is not just waking up. They are waking up without resistance toward the moment you have entered. So if your dog sees you and stretches in a way that looks soft and unguarded, that may be one quiet sign that your presence is not something their body has to prepare against. In that moment, they may feel comfortable enough to let themselves open a little instead. 3. Sometimes the stretch is not just about the body, it is a very quiet kind of greeting. Not every dog says hello in a loud way. Some dogs run to the door. Some bounce, wag wildly, or spin in circles. But others greet you much more softly. They see you, stretch once, pause, and only then decide whether to come closer, watch you a little longer, or wait for you to enter their space. In those moments, the stretch can become something more social than physical. It is not just the body waking up. It is not only the body staying relaxed. It is also the dog marking your arrival in a calm, low-pressure way. A quiet acknowledgement, a soft shift that says, I see you. I know you are here. Something has changed now that you have entered the moment. That is what makes this kind of stretch feel so easy to miss. It does not demand anything. It does not interrupt the room. It does not force interaction. It simply places your arrival into the dog's awareness in a way that is gentle and socially open. And that matters because dogs do not always greet by rushing forward. Sometimes they greet by changing posture first. A stretch can be part of that posture change. The body lengthens, the energy rises just a little, the dog becomes present to you, and only after that does the rest of the interaction unfold. Maybe they walk toward you. Maybe they wait for you to come closer. Maybe they just hold that softer, more connected state for a moment. So if your dog sees you, stretches, and then calmly acknowledges you without much noise, that may be their version of a very polite hello. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just real. 4. If the stretch looks more like a playbow, it may be a much clearer invitation. This is where the meaning becomes more outward and more intentional. Not every stretch is a greeting, and not every stretch is a playbow. But if your dog lowers the front of the body, keeps the rear higher, stays springy through the movement, and pairs it with bright eyes, loose energy, or a lively tail, then the message may be more direct. At that point, your dog may not just be acknowledging you. They may be inviting you in. That is what makes this different from the softer greeting we talked about before. A quiet greeting says, I see you. A playbow says, now do something with me. Play, move, follow me. Stay in this moment with me. This kind of stretch has more intention behind it. The body is not only opening, it is offering. Your dog is creating a bridge between presence and interaction. They are showing that your arrival has not just registered, it has created momentum. And you can often feel that difference immediately. A soft greeting stretch may end in stillness or a calm walk toward you. A playbow stretch usually feels more alive. It often comes with a pause full of expectation, as if your dog is waiting to see whether you will answer the invitation. Sometimes it leads into play, sometimes into bouncing, circling, or a light burst of energy. Sometimes it is simply the dog's way of saying, I am ready for something shared now. That is why context matters so much here. If the stretch carries the shape and energy of a playbow, it is usually less about rest, less about basic comfort, and more about social possibility. So when your dog stretches in that playful, lowered way, right after seeing you, the meaning may be very simple. They are not only glad you are there, they are hoping you will join them in what comes next. 5. Sometimes the stretch matters because it has become part of a familiar pattern your dog associates with you. Not every stretch means something because of the stretch alone. Sometimes it means something because of what usually comes after it. Some dogs do this in a pattern that becomes almost predictable. They see you, stretch, walk over, wait by the door, look toward the leash, head to the kitchen, ask for breakfast, or get ready for some other part of the day they have learned to connect with your presence. In those moments, the stretch is not just a body waking up. It is part of a sequence the dog already knows. That is what makes this different from the first explanation. Earlier, the stretch was simply a physical reset after rest. Here, the stretch has become tied to anticipation. Your dog has lived through the same chain often enough that their body starts preparing for what usually happens next the moment you appear. You might be the signal for a walk, for food, for play, for the door opening, for morning beginning, for the house becoming active again. And once that association is strong enough, the stretch can become one small link in the routine their body expects. That is why the behavior can feel so consistent in some dogs. It shows up at the same time of day, in the same room, right before the same kind of interaction. Not because the dog is sending one deep emotional message every single time, but because your presence has become part of a familiar rhythm their body has learned to recognize, and that does not make it less meaningful. In a way, it makes it more personal, because it means your dog has woven you into a pattern of expectation. When they see you, their body does not only react to the moment, it reacts to the history of many moments that look just like this one. So if your dog tends to stretch when they see you and then immediately move into the same next step, the meaning may be very simple. Your arrival has become the beginning of something known, and their body is already getting ready for it. 6. The deepest meaning may be this. Your presence helps your dog move into a more open state. By this point, it becomes clear that no single stretch has one fixed meaning every time. Sometimes it begins as a simple physical reset. Sometimes it reflects comfort. Sometimes it becomes a soft greeting. Sometimes it carries the shape of invitation. Sometimes it is woven into a familiar routine your dog has learned around you. But when you step back and look at the pattern beneath all of those possibilities, one idea rises above the rest. Your presence may be helping your dog shift into a state that is more open, more responsive, and more ready for connection. That does not always mean explosive excitement. It does not always mean your dog is overwhelmed with joy. Sometimes the change is much quieter than that. A body that softens a little, a posture that lengthens instead of staying guarded. A dog that moves from stillness into gentle readiness, from private rest into shared awareness. And that is what makes the stretch so meaningful. It can be one of those small behaviors that shows the transition happening in real time. Your dog sees you and something in the body changes. Not necessarily in a dramatic way, but in a real one. The moment becomes more social, more awake, more engaged, more willing. In that sense, the stretch may not be saying one sentence as clearly as people wish it would. It may be saying something broader and more physical than language. You matter to my state. You change the tone of this moment. I am not in exactly the same place I was before I saw you. That is why these small gestures are worth noticing. Not because every stretch is a declaration of love, but because so many of them reveal how deeply the body responds to presence, trust, routine, and connection. So if your dog stretches when they see you, the biggest meaning may not be hidden in one dramatic interpretation. It may be something simpler and more beautiful than that. Your presence helps their body become more ready for relationship. Your dog may not always show affection in big obvious ways. They may not always come running. They may not always bounce with excitement or make their feelings easy to read. But sometimes one small stretch when they see you can say something much bigger than it seems. Sometimes it really is just the body waking up. Sometimes it is comfort. Sometimes it is a soft hello. Sometimes it is an invitation to play. And sometimes it is simply one familiar link in a pattern your dog has built around you over time. But in many cases, the most important truth is this. Your presence does not pass through your dog as something neutral. It changes something. It shifts the body. It softens the moment. It prepares them, even in a quiet way, for whatever comes next between the two of you. So the next time your dog stretches when they see you, do not stop at the thought that they are just loosening their muscles. Ask something a little deeper. What state did my presence just help my dog move into? Because once you start noticing that, even the smallest behaviors begin to feel a lot less small.